Thank you for listening to Southern Gospel Journal. My name is Daniel Mount, and I am joined today by Greg Bentley. Good morning. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Daniel. I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
Great to see your face again and talk to you again.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Used to see you around the building all the time.
Yeah, and then we did drop by maybe a year or two ago, but it was before the
Yeah.
hurricane.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Could we start with your background, like where you grew up, your
Mhm.
testimony, and what first sparked your love for Southern gospel music?
Okay, sure. Um, I grew up in a military family, so a lot of people think, well, you probably moved a lot, but my dad didn't take us all the different places when he went overseas. So I was actually born in North Carolina, down near Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, Army base, and then not long after I was born, he was transferred to Fort Rucker, Alabama. And so I grew up the first 12 years, I guess it was, of my life in Southern Alabama.
Hmm.
Um, and That's actually where I was when I got saved. First Baptist Church, Daleville, Alabama, July 15th, 1973. And that lets you
Wonderful.
know how old I am now. So, uh, but it was, great there. And of course, both of my parents' family were from Boone, North Carolina.
Mhm.
And so when my dad retired, my brother and myself were like, we used to go to Boone every summer for vacation. And so we were like, let's move to Boone. Let's move to Boone. And mom and dad decided, why not? We're retired from the military now. Let's move. So basically, my life from 12 years old until I moved away and started singing was in Boone. And that's where I actually got introduced to Southern gospel music.
Okay.
Uh, First 12 years of my life, I don't know that I had ever heard what Southern gospel was. I don't have any recollection of that at all. And we moved to Boone, and of course, all the churches around Boone have, Saturday night singing, Sunday night singing, all that kind. That's just a big area. For your listeners, some of the people from that area, the Greens.
Hmm.
I grew up with Tim and Kim and their younger brother Tony, the Hayes family, Mylan Hayes family now, but the original Hayes family, Mylan and his sisters Sharon and Janet and their family. So there's a lot of gospel music in the Boone area, and so that's kind of where I got into it. And that's partially because of my mom's side of the family. My grandfather was very much into music. He taught the old shape note singing, and he made sure all of his kids, they would learn how to sing, and some of them played instruments. And so that's where the musical side of my life came from, was from my mom's side of the Teague family. And so that's kind of how it all got started. And then from there, it just kind of we'll get in through the rest of it from there.
Hmm. All right. So, do you remember if your interest in gospel music just gradually grew, or was there one or a couple of particular moments where you heard something really powerful live, or as the case may be, and you were like, "That's what I want to do."
It really kind of came on pretty quickly.
Hmm.
In the Boone area, of course, some of the local or the TV stations that we could get there back then, it was it was all broadcast. There was no internet or cable vision or anything like that. So, but one of the channels that we could get had the gospel singing Jubilee show.
Hmm.
And so, getting up on Sunday morning, getting ready for church, would turn on the TV, and that would come on. And I was just really taken by the whole thing of the music and the harmonies and all that kind of stuff. And thankfully, Boone being a big area for music, some of those groups would come through the area and do concerts there in the Boone area. And so the first time I went to one, I was like, wow, this is really neat. I want to sing, not knowing that you could actually do it for a living.
Hmm.
I just wanted to sing. So, my brother and my grandfather on my mom's side, Grandpa Teague, and a couple cousins and an uncle actually got together and started singing some. and then it started growing a little bit more and a little bit more, and one would say, "Well, I can't do it anymore," and stuff like that. Um, and so that's really where it all got started, was just watching the gospel singing jubilee.
Did you have a like a family group name, and did you do any recordings, or was it just live?
When we first started singing,
Mhm.
I honestly don't know that we actually ever put a name together for it, and it was just going around to the local churches on, those
Mhm.
4th Saturday night, 5th Sunday night singing type things. But once, I ended up starting to sing with a couple other cousins, and we took it a little bit more seriously. And we actually had a name, and I don't know that you'll find a recording out there. We did do one album, um,
Okay.
but the group's name was the Proclamations. And
Okay.
and we're proclaiming the good news, and so, but we actually traveled and sang Western North Carolina, East
Mhm.
Tennessee, Southern Virginia, part of South Carolina, for I would guess probably 4 years or so,
Okay.
and just had a great time doing it.
You sang tenor, and did you play an instrument?
Did not play anything. I took 3 years of piano, but if you sit
Mhm.
me down at a piano, you would never know that I took 3 years of piano.
Yeah.
I was definitely more interested in the singing side of things, and, in fact, my piano teacher, um, she said, "You have a bad habit. You're playing songs you know, and you're playing them by ear, you're not playing them by note," and she could never break me from that habit, so, it didn't help me a whole lot to do piano.
All right. What were your early tenor singing influences? Who did you hear and you were like, I want to be sing like that, or maybe you model a little bit of what you do after that kind of thing?
Some people will get this right off the bat, Johnny Cook.
Hmm.
Uh, well, the first time I heard The Goodmans with Johnny Cook, and I knew I could sing that range because I
Hmm.
was, still young, um, and I was like, "That's what I wanna do. I wanna do that." So he was the first tenor thing, but, our family and my cousins that traveled and sang quite a bit, we were a mixed group.
Okay.
Um, and so it was, um, Gary who sang basically lead and played piano. His
Okay.
wife, Vanessa, sang alto, and then I sang the tenor part above her.
Hmm.
And so I knew I could sing those parts, and my favorite group when I first got into music was the Hensons.
Okay. Yes.
Loved the Hensons back when, um, who is now Chris Freeman,
Hmm.
was with them, and we did a lot of their songs. And so, uh, it wasn't just the tenors that I was, really drawn to. Johnny Cook, Johnny Perrick was with the Kingsmen at that time, and then Ernie came just right after that. Archie Watkins. It wasn't just those; it was the female vocals as well
Hmm.
because we did a lot of their songs.
Makes sense. You'd sing the highest part, whether it was originally a man or a woman who'd recorded
Yep,
that part.
yep, exactly.
That makes sense. So, what did your audition process look like for joining the Hoppers? How did you hear about the opening, or how did they hear about you? And did you sing songs on the audition? Had they already heard you sing somewhere else? What did that all look like?
Well, actually, our family vacation, once we moved to Boone and course got to following music, our summer family vacation was going to the Hoppers camp meeting up in Virginia called Watermelon Park.
Okay.
So I kind of got to know them a little bit there. Dean and myself are 6 months apart in age.
Okay.
And so here, both of us are 13, 14-year-old teenagers running around and riding bikes all over the park and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of got to know them a little bit there,
Hmm.
but I entered their talent contest
Hmm.
in 1981, I believe it
Okay.
was. And they did a group and a solo division in there, and I won the solo division.
Hmm.
And so that kind of helps spur them that I could actually sing.
Hmm.
Um, and then before I got to the Hoppers, I was traveling with a group out of Burlington, North Carolina called the Christianaires.
Okay.
Um, it was a all male quartet. I don't know where they heard about me,
Hmm.
but somewhere they did, and asked if I would come sing. They were at that time they were a part-time kind of southeastern group, trying to get a little bit farther along, and so I was the first paid employee
Hmm.
of the Christianaires, and so we sang with the Hoppers a couple times, and actually had the Hoppers at our homecoming uh, one year. And somebody went to Claude and said, "You need to get that tenor with the Christianaires and Sharon Watts to do Looking for a City." And so we
Okay.
did. We did, and the funny part, I'll never forget this. The funny part was they didn't know how high I could sing.
Okay.
They had no all they had heard was me doing quartet stuff with the Christianaires.
Yeah.
So we get out there singing. Well, my mind's going back to, of course, Johnny Cook,
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, let's just do it and see where we end up at. So we're singing it, and we keep going up and up and up. Well, Dean finally steps up behind Sharon. He says, "You're not going to let this guy out sing you, are you?" Well, but he did that with her. She's fired up. She's ready to go. So Connie comes over behind me, and she's like, "Come on, can you do one more? Do one more." And we got to doing it that I think, if I remember right, we ended in F sharp
That's high.
because they finally just said, "Okay, y'all sing one together. We can't just keep going here." So that's
Oh
kind
my
of really
word.
where the Hoppers realized who I was
Yeah.
and how I could sing.
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't but probably 6 months after that, maybe, that the Christianaires decided to fold.
Okay.
And so I went back home to Boone. And one day I had come in from town, and Dad said, "Claude Hopper called you today and wants you to call him back.
Hmm.
And here's his number." So I called Claude and I said, "Hey, this is Greg Bentley. I understand you call. What do you need?" He said, "I need somebody to fill in for Connie for a couple weeks, and I didn't know if you might be able to do that, or if you were
Okay.
still, singing or whatever." And I said, "Well, I'm not singing right now, so sure, I could come do it. When would you need me to come down?" He said, this was like on a Tuesday. Um, he said, "Can you be here Thursday morning?" And I was like, "Wow, that's short notice. Sure." And so packed up stuff, went, drove down, got on the bus, didn't know what we were going to be singing. We learned the songs for Thursday night on the way to the date,
Hmm.
which obviously I'm sure I missed half of it because I just wasn't familiar with some of it. But that's how I got started with the Hoppers. I was actually filling in for Connie, and that went on for a couple months because she was having a really hard time with allergies,
Okay.
and
So
and
this
so
wasn't the cancer. This
no,
wasn't
this
the
was
cancer fight.
after she had
Okay.
cancer the first time.
Okay.
So it wasn't any kind of a health issue like that. So I stayed for, I want to say I was there 3 or 4 months,
Hmm.
just filling in. And then when Connie would go, um, they just kept me on stage and said, if Connie needs some help, she can just, look to you or whatever. Um, and it ended up becoming a full-time position. They decided to hire me at that time. So there's the period of time when I first started, there was 5 vocals with the
Hmm.
Hoppers.
I want to ask a question about that, but go back to one little detail first.
Okay.
Just curious, that 1981 or thereabouts Watermelon Festival talent contest that you entered.
Mhm.
Do you have any recollection of what you sang there?
I sang the Goodman version of These Are They,
Oh, that's an amazing song.
and I sang, I'm trying to remember what I did an up-tempo song that was really just driving and stayed up in the high range, and I'm drawing a blank on what that song was, but that was
Okay.
the 2 songs that I we got to sing 2 songs, and that
Yeah.
was the 2 songs that I sang.
I think many Southern gospel fans, as far as they know, they was first ever sung by David Phelps, and you have a
Oh,
treat coming if you go to YouTube and look up Vesta Goodman singing that song.
yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was actually going to ask a question about that first initial period when you were with the Hoppers, because I was going back through the albums from that era, and I was a little confused because the Traveling Right album is 1984,
Uh-huh.
and you're pictured on the back cover, but not the front cover. And I don't hear your voice on
Mm-mm.
any of the tracks. But then
Mm,
the next year, 1985, is Citizen of Two Worlds, and you're
mhm,
on the front cover, and I hear your voice at least some of the time.
mhm,
So that
mhm.
84 album, was that when you were like, you've been brought on full time, but you're doubling a part, so they like put your picture on the back, but didn't even have you on the album vocally? Is that kind of what was going on there?
Yeah, they had actually recorded that album
Okay.
already, when I got technically hired, um, and so they just put a picture on the back,
Hmm.
just because I was a part of the group, even though I was not on the album at all. So Citizen of Two Worlds album was like, we did one album before Citizen of Two Worlds.
Was it so this is one I couldn't find much because it's just nowhere online. There was is it I Know What Lies Ahead, is that the name of it? And some more like cover songs, like a table project?
We did a table project that was basically just cover songs,
Yeah.
um, and I can't remember what the title of the album was. I'm sure I have a copy of it at the house somewhere, um, but that would have been the first one. We actually recorded that at Robbie Heiner's studio.
Oh, okay.
I remember that. The Citizen of Two Worlds album was the first, I guess what we call today a mainline album,
Hmm.
even though the Hoppers were not actually on a label, at that point. Um, we did the Citizen of Two Worlds album, and that was the first album that Larry Goss, uh, produced, if I remember right, or did he do Stand for Jesus might have been his first one. Uh,
I just sent you a list to the link to the SG history page
uh
that lists the Hoppers albums from that era, just to try to straighten it out in my head as much as anything.
yeah.
There's one on there called "I Know What Lies Ahead" that has some um that might be it. But again, you're not on the front cover of that one, and there might just be a table album that they don't know about. Oh, there's also special requests. I see this
Um,
one. Oh, for a thousand tongues, looking for a city. John saw. He looked beyond my faults. That
that's the
sounds
one.
right. Okay,
That's
so
the
that's the
one.
first one you were on vocally.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that came
Yes,
out
'cause I
first.
remember
Yeah.
I remember we one of the main reasons that we did it was because of Looking for a City.
Hmm.
Um, Claude wanted that because we were doing it every night, and so Claude, wanted that for the table, so that was the
That
first
makes
one.
sense.
And then, Citizen of Two Worlds would have come, um
Later in the year.
yes, yes,
Okay.
and the request one, it being a table project, I doubt that anybody has ever that one has gotten hid somewhere.
It's nowhere to be found on YouTube or anywhere else.
Yeah, yeah. I probably
Cool.
have a cassette of that one somewhere. So
Cool. All right. So on Citizen of Two Worlds, I had a couple questions about that song in
mhm,
particular, because when I think of your time with the Hoppers, especially, I think of Marriage Supper of the Lamb and Citizen of Two Worlds are like the two songs that come to mind
mhm,
first from
mhm.
that era, in part because those are two songs the Hoppers continued singing for years thereafter, and they were still singing them when I discovered Southern Gospel and started hearing it. And so, anyhow, just two songs I know well from that era.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any memories around the song Citizen of Two Worlds coming to the group? Like how it was picked, the arrangement, if you're a part of any of that process? Or like another aspect of that is, I understand it was written by George Lewis and published by the
Mhm.
Hoppers Publishing Companies.
Mhm.
I can't
Mhm.
find anything about him online. Like, did you meet him? Do you know him? So, like, anything like that around the song, I think would be really interesting because
Yeah.
I love the song and can't find any of that anywhere online.
Yeah, yeah. George Lewis was a music minister at a church.
Okay.
And the last now I honestly don't know. I haven't had any contact with him probably in at least 10 years.
Okay.
But as of that point, he was still a music minister
Mm,
at that point. He, like I said, he was a music minister. He wrote songs. I just assumed that he probably had sent it into the hoppers. Um,
mhm.
Connie usually was the key for picking songs.
Okay.
Um, Everything came into the office there. Joyce, which was Claude's sister-in-law, she ran the office.
Okay.
Joyce would put them all in a box, send them to the bus. Of course, back then it was demos on cassette, so we had to have
Mhm.
cassette Walkmans or something like that to listen to music on. But Connie would sit and listen through all the songs, and then she would bring stuff to the bus and say, "Okay, I think these are good songs. I think we could do these. I can hear this kind of arrangement." Because Connie musically was most people didn't realize she was as smart and as talented as she was in arranging, but
Mhm.
she was really, really good with hearing what could come out.
Yeah.
Um, and so she brought that one to the bus and she goes, "Here's kind of what I'm hearing. Um, it's going to be first verse is going to be the group singing. And then we'll go into the thing. It's got repeats with it. So Sharon will take the first steps out. Of the first chorus, we'll do the repeats. Then Dean will sing the second verse, and then we'll come back. And then when we do uh, the invert and the parts said, Greg, you'll take the repeats at that point,
Mhm.
and do it through. And we did it that way. It was our first radio single from that album, if I remember right, and it was very popular. I still have people today
Mhm.
come up. Hey, I haven't seen you in forever. Can you still sing Citizen of Two Worlds?
Do you ever sing it still?
It's been a long time.
Okay.
I
The
went
melody is
with
so low, it would be hard to do that solo.
yeah,
You
yeah,
almost have to
that's
have harmonies to even
yes.
pull it off.
That's definitely a group song because it kind of loses some of its, punch there if you try to do that as a solo, but, it's been one of those that has lived on for sure.
There's something timeless about it. There's something really special.
Yeah.
Something I was really curious about just looking in the album sequence. There's
Mhm,
2 songs right next to each other in the album sequence, which are "I Love America" and
mhm,
"Citizen of Two Worlds" back to back.
mhm.
And now, I mean, you might not have been part of these conversations, or if you were, you might not remember. That's perfectly fine. But do you have any idea? I was just looking at that and wondering if the Hoppers put those 2 songs back to back so that people didn't take "Citizen of Two Worlds" the wrong way.
Um Uh, I don't know that that had
Okay.
anything to do with it. I think it was back in that day, of course, we did vinyl.
Yeah.
That was the big thing, and then we were doing cassettes as well.
Mhm.
And so you had to, sequence everything for vinyl because
So
you've
that
only
each
got
song fit.
yes,
Yeah.
you've only got, 13 minutes or 15 minutes per side, and
Mhm.
so you've gotta kinda time out your songs to where they fit right. They wanted to put Citizen of Two Worlds as a first song on side 2,
That makes sense.
basically because of it being the album title. If it wasn't gonna be the first song on side 1, it needed to be the first one on side 2.
Okay. So then somewhere around that time, late 85 or into 86, Sharon left.
Mhm.
And then they decided at that point you kind of became a frontline member, a full-time frontline member of the group at that point. Is that kind of the timing of what happened?
It is. When Sharon got married,
Hmm.
and left the group, they decided there's really no need for us to necessarily bring in there was a person, and there's a lot of video out there
Hmm.
of this. There was another girl, that traveled with us. Her name is Stephanie Hopper.
Okay.
Stephanie was Claude's brother Steve's youngest daughter.
Okay.
And at this point, she was 14 or 15 years old,
Mhm.
but an amazing singer, just great singer. So when Sharon left, they brought Stephanie in for a little while.
Mhm.
But of course, her being that age, needing to finish school, all that kind of stuff, she wasn't there to do any albums or anything like that. But she did do some. There's some Sing Out America shows.
Mhm.
Um, and there's one other, I can't remember where it was. Might have been the old PTL shows that has Stephanie um, on it as well. But obviously, when they found out, it just wasn't going to work there, Claude and Connie said, "We don't need to hire somebody else. We'll just put Greg on the top.
Mhm.
Connie's next, Dean and Claude." And so we went on that way until after Dean and Kim got married.
Was it a really unusual thing, for that era that you were singing harmonies above a female alto, or were there other groups doing that?
No, really, that was very rare. Um, it really was almost kind of that Goodman sound
Mhm.
when Johnny Cook was there after Howard and Vestal left.
After they left and it was, Sam and Rusty and Tanya.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
and Johnny had the top part,
Yeah.
um, and so it was very much a throwback to that sound. Um, and so we were, best of my memory, we were the only artist out there really still doing it that way.
Okay.
Most others had, a soprano and then a guy below it if it was in that type of a format.
So I think it was 5 years before you joined so you joined the group in '84.
Hmm.
It had been up through 5 years before that that Kirk Talley was with the group. Now, did
Hmm.
the Hoppers was he singing a part above Connie at that point, kinda like you were doing? And so they're kind of almost like returning to a Kirk Talley era sound, if that makes sense?
A little bit, but the time that Kirk was there, Kirk was actually hired as the bass player.
Okay, the bass player?
Yeah, and so he didn't sing on everything,
I see.
uh, because at that time, Connie and Claude's brother Will was a
Mhm.
high tenor type singer
Yeah.
as well, and so, they just threw in Kirk from time to time, um, and then, of course, when, Roger Talley, which was playing piano for the Hoppers
Mhm.
at that point, when he married Deborah,
Mhm.
then Deborah came to the group,
Yeah.
um,
She
and
sang
was
really high in those days.
yes, she was above Connie, on the thing, and of course, at that point, it wasn't long till Cathedrals wanted to hire Kirk,
Yes.
and so Kirk went to the Cathedrals at that point.
Okay. Your tone, like, when you joined the Hoppers, were you trying in any way in those first couple albums to kind of fit into a Kirk Talley style of placement, or was that just any similarities just happened to be the case?
Yeah, those just happened to happen if they did. I definitely was not trying,
Okay.
to do that in any way. My goal was to always try to do the most that I could to blend with Connie,
Yeah.
um, just to keep that blend, together there, and, thankfully, we were able to do it for quite a while.
Yeah. Okay, so the other Hoppers classic I mentioned that they still sang for decades thereafter, what that came from your era was "Marriage Supper of the Lamb."
Mhm,
And you were so it was a 1988 live album
mhm.
that you were on that original version. So I heard the newer versions first, the Gaither videos and whatnot,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I was used to it being an up tempo song,
Oh, okay,
and it
nice.
was just a real surprise to me to go back and hear the original and hear it more mid tempo.
Yeah.
Um, so did you after you put it on the live album, did you start to speed it up? In live performances during your time, or was it mid tempo your whole time, and then it turning into up tempo came later?
Yeah, it was mid-tempo the whole time that we did it. Gene Cantor wrote that song,
Hmm.
and a great friend with the Hoppers and the Greens both, because she was from Boone.
Yeah.
Um, and so her demo that she brought to us was kind of that mid-tempo feel.
I see.
And so we just learned it that way right off the bat. And it stayed that way. I mean, it was one of our very popular songs back then. Um, and so, when we did the live album, that's obviously the tempo that we put it in and stayed that way. When Kim came with the group and they decided to cover that song again, um, Larry Goss produced that album, and Larry said, "Let's do this as a more upbeat thing. I can hear this working really well for that." And so they went that route with it.
He had such an ear for what a song could be.
Yes.
Uh, there are so many good producers with different skill sets, but I don't know how many stories I've heard of a song sounding different in some way, and then Larry having a different version, a vision for it that was just so creative. He was a
Mhm.
blessing to our industry.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
So, other than the two I mentioned, in your days with the Hoppers, what were the other audience favorites? The songs that people would really be disappointed if you didn't sing live.
Um, well, obviously, you know, just about anything that Connie was featured on. Everybody loves Connie,
Yes,
uh,
definitely.
and I do too. That's the I guess the welcoming to the family that Connie provided for pretty much so anyone who worked there, um,
Hmm.
just goes on and on. Um, on the live album, the very first song, "Step Along,"
Hmm.
was an old Hopper song from quite a ways back. Actually, that was back in the Kirk days,
Okay.
that they had recorded it, before, and it was always, one of those that was a fan favorite. People just really enjoyed the feel of it, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So that one was a very much of one that, people constantly ask for. Um Trying to think, obviously, Citizen of Two Worlds,
Hmm.
Stand for Jesus, which
Okay.
actually became an album title as well. That one, I believe, was the first Larry Goss album, if I remember right.
Okay.
Um, that song was, one that people really, really loved. It's a song that Connie wrote. So that was always a favorite. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Smoke of the Battle,
Okay.
which was also an album title. That was a
Yes.
radio single for us, and um, I've actually had people come up and say that was one of my favorite songs that y'all did back in the day because it just had a really good groove to it.
Hmm.
Just a lot of drive to it. So that was um, a very popular one back in the day as well. Um, I'm drawing blanks on a lot of the other stuff,
No
but
problem. That's
uh,
that's a good start. That's
Heavenly
good for
Honey, of
yeah.
course, was one of them that they actually ended up visiting too, because Heavenly Honey was
Hmm.
on the Citizen of Two Worlds album,
Yeah.
and they went back and re-recorded that one as well.
Yeah, I think those are a good starting point just for people who only know the newer hoppers to go
Mhm.
pull up a few older songs and
Yeah,
get introduced to the 80s version of the group.
yeah,
So when Dean married Kim, she didn't join the group immediately. There was a
right.
year or more when she was
Yes.
going out with the Greens every week and Dean was going out with the Hoppers every week.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but when she did join, that was
mhm,
when your time with the Hoppers came to an end then, right?
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes.
so, as we were talking about, you're singing a harmony part above Connie. So it's kind of essentially Kim came in singing your part until they redid, new albums, new arrangements built around the new four voices. She kind of came in and sang your part when you joined then, right?
Yes, we were just about the time that she, uh, was gonna join, we were in the process of cutting the On These Grounds album,
Hmm.
which came out in, I think, 1990, somewhere around
Yeah, that
there.
sounds right.
Um, and so that album, if you go back and listen to that album, I did half of it and Kim did half of it.
Hmm.
And, that was kind of the transition period. Um, but it wasn't long after we did that album that, it was the convention after Quartet convention after that Down East Boys reached out and said, "Hey, we're looking for a tenor singer. understand, Kim is coming to the Hoppers. Would you be interested in it? And so that's around the time that we did the switch there, and I went to Down East.
Cool. I do want to talk about Down East, but one more question on the Hoppers before moving on to the Down East portion, and that is, I had the chance to meet Claude and Connie just at the product table here and there. Didn't get to know them that well, but there are definitely some newer fans to the genre who've come into it in the last few years who've never met them.
Mhm.
So and like thinking like my kids, for instance, I'm part of the reason I'm recording these episodes for is for my kids to listen to someday. Um,
Yeah.
so like for the sake of newer fans, people who are just now coming into the music, or even come in a few years from now and come back and see this conversation, what was it like to travel with Claude and Connie? Can you describe their personalities and maybe some memorable or funny moments with them on the road also?
Yeah. It's it's interesting the dynamic there. Of course,
Mhm.
everybody thinks of Claude as the ultimate businessman, which he truly is.
Yes.
His business way of doing things is incredible,
Yeah.
um, and so he was very much so. Let's make sure we've got this. He would give everybody their own job that they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
Um, and so, my position was the product table, and so I
Okay.
had to make sure, we had all the product that we needed for the bus for whatever the weekend was and all that kind of stuff. And he was very, very much a stickler of, you do this, you make sure it's here. If you don't, it's your fault. Um,
Mhm.
and but at the same time, he was a great guy to travel with. He wasn't just a slave driver or something like that, but he was very business oriented with all of his employees. Connie, on the other hand, was road mom, is the
Mhm.
best way that I can explain Connie. And to this day, I'll text Connie and I'll say, "Hey, mom, how you doing?" And she'll text back, "Doing good, son. Good to hear from you." So she was very much road mom to all of us.
Yeah.
Um, and so, that's kind of made the whole thing just, very easy to work there.
Yeah.
I'll cherish those days forever.
Wonderful. So when you joined the Down East Boys, what was the transition like just vocally from singing almost in like a soprano register as far as what you find in the hymnal to in a quartet tenor? You're kind of more, whatever the part structure is, you're probably more like in the alto region of where you find in a hymnal. What was that transition like vocally? Was it easier, harder to shift into quartet tenor role?
Even though I had sung with a quartet right before the Hoppers,
Hmm.
that quartet was kind of built around where I sang. We
Okay.
sang as a quartet pretty high.
Yeah.
Down East Boys were not that way. They were
Yeah.
the lead singer was not a high lead singer. And so their range was really low. Um, and when I first started, it was a struggle. In fact, we ended up uh, kind of rearranging some songs because they were not in a key for me at all. And when I
Hmm.
joined them, their song "Beautiful Valley"
Hmm.
had just hit the charts when I joined. And of course, it was with the previous tenor singer, which really was in, if you figure Gold City or the Singing Americans
Hmm.
or some of those quartets, their tenor singer was in the lead singer range. Um,
Yes.
and so he was quite a bit lower. And it was too low for me to really sing and be effective.
Yeah.
And so we ended up having to rearrange that song. Thankfully, we had a live band and not singing with tracks, so we could
Hmm.
change keys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was quite a transition the first year there. Um, but it wasn't long after that to where the lead singer, he owned a huge florist company,
Hmm.
greenhouses and stuff like that down there in eastern North Carolina. And it was too much for him to try to do both because the Down East boys were traveling more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so we ended up actually I brought Ricky Carden to the Down
Okay.
East Boys because I had met Ricky through the Hoppers. He
Okay.
had
Cool.
filled in for Dean when
Okay.
Dean got sick one time. And so I asked Ricky if he would be interested, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to go do it." So That's how Ricky ended up with at the Down East Boys, and of course now he owns the Down East Boys.
Yeah. Now, so he was not the lead singer you were mentioning at the time, because
No,
he can get up to fairly high.
yeah, yeah.
He
Ricky's a
he's
good
a pretty high
high
lead
lead
singer,
singer.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when he
He's
when he came on, that kind of probably suited your range a little better.
yes, yes.
That makes
When we
sense.
hired Ricky and we're starting on the first album that way, actually, we never did an album before Ricky came with me with the Down
Mhm.
East Boys. And so when Ricky came in, we arranged things for that lineup and where it was comfort vocally for everybody.
Cool. So I'm pretty familiar with the Down East Boys over the last 20 years, but
Mhm.
it's hard to find out much about their early days anywhere online. As far as just their songs aren't on YouTube, you can't find a streaming anywhere else. So I think you did 3 albums with the Down East Boys.
That
It
sounds
sounds
right.
about right, somewhere in that
Yeah.
vicinity, maybe 3
Yeah,
main lines at
I was
least.
actually just pulling up the SG history thing to
Mhm,
refresh my memory. So when I joined them, the Miles of Smiles album was the one that had Beautiful Valley on it.
mhm.
And then our first album when I came there came out in 1990 called Musical Cheers.
Yes.
Um, and then we did that one, Yesterday, Today, Forever, and Vital Information were the 3 albums
Yeah.
that I did there. Yeah.
And all the years of checking thrift stores and whatnot, Yesterday and Today and Forever is the only one I ever found of those 3. Never found the other 2. Uh, but I don't have a good feel. Were they touring nationally, or were they full time at the time you joined them, or were they like starting to work in that direction?
They were working in that direction. Cheryl Futrell owned the group,
Okay.
um, and he was a contractor down near the east coast of North Carolina. Charles Howard was the lead singer. He was the one that owned the greenhouses and the
Hmm.
florist company. So he could kind of work his schedule how he needed it to until it just got too busy. Um, the tenor singer, I don't know what kind of a job he had because obviously I filled his position when he left. And then Jeff Davis was the baritone singer at that time, and he owned his own company. And so they were pretty flexible to be able to travel, and they were trying to get to do more dates and stuff like that. And so really when I came on was when they really started stretching out their dates more. And just after I came was when they actually started going into the full time position there.
Okay. Uh, something I still smile whenever I listen to from that middle album, the Singing News song.
Oh yeah,
Novelty songs are always a risk. Uh,
yes.
did that one catch on in live performance? Did people love it, or was it something you only did like as a lark and didn't do too many times thereafter?
We did that because, of course, we were recording for Sunlight Records,
Hmm.
and Chris White and Kevin McManus owned Sunlight Records. Well, they were had big connections with Ronnie Henson.
Yes.
Ronnie Henson wrote the Singing News song.
Okay.
And the whole idea was if we do the Singing News song, it's going to get played everywhere that Singing News charts on radio stations.
Hmm.
So that was kind of their thought pattern behind that. So let's do that. And it could become a theme song for Singing News magazine, which they used it some, but it never did what they had really planned that it would do. It truly was a novelty song, and we actually used it kind of as a way to pitch subscriptions for the Singing News. We would
Oh,
sing the
okay.
song and then do our Singing News subscription pitch.
Cool. So what were some of the other songs from those other albums? What were the songs from that era that people just loved hearing y'all do live?
um, Worthy is the Lamb,
Hmm.
which was from the Yesterday to Today and Forever song. That was a Joyce and Colbert Croft song.
Okay.
Um, and that was probably one of our bigger songs. It was a radio single, and people just always would request that one. Shadow of the Cross was from the musical Cheers album, the very first album that I did with them. Um, and that one actually, Joyce Martin actually wrote that song. Um, and a lot of people really um, love that one. He Kept Loving Me was another song that a lot of people came up and requested. That was a Carol Magruder song because we had a connection there through the record label. Um, the Finish Line from the Musical Chairs album was a very popular one. Um, I'm trying to think off the top of my head and looking at some of these song titles here,
Hmm.
which other ones were. Of course, the classic Family Bible. That's
Yeah.
one of those that everybody just loves. I Will Glory in the Cross. We covered that. The Dottie Rambo song.
Yes.
So we had some that people kind of gravitated to.
Cool. So I have some questions regarding your time. I think you did a column for Singing News for a while, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, that and your time with Horizon Crossroads and pitching songs and A&R. But I think if it's all right, we'll save these for another conversation, and I'll
sure.
just move on to you're on the stage on the stage things in this conversation.
Okay.
Uh, so something I actually didn't know until a couple days ago, or somehow I'd totally forgotten. SG History lists you as a member of the Singing Americans in 1994, and I somehow had not known that till the other day. Were you with them like near as they were winding down? And I don't know if you recorded anything with them.
Yeah, interesting story here.
Okay.
Um, when the Singing Americans had Danny Funderburk, Ivan Parker,
Yes.
Dwayne Burke, and I can't remember who, Ed Hill.
Ed Hill. I was going to
Um,
ask you, was Ed Hill?
yeah, when it was that lineup,
Hmm.
Danny Funderburk came down with pneumonia one weekend. And Charlie Burke called me and he said, "Can you fill in for Danny this weekend?"
Okay.
And I said, "Sure, I don't have anything going on this weekend. I'll jump on the bus and go." So went down to Maiden, jumped on the bus. We took off to Georgia, and that just happened to be the weekend that they had their big bus wreck
Oh.
that
Okay.
basically almost took Ed Hill's leg off.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was
I'm
filling.
not familiar with that. Was he driving?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That would have been, ooh, I
If it was
can't
Ivan,
remember.
it was before '83. That's
Yeah,
when he joined
yeah.
Gold City.
It was, I wanna say it was before I joined the Hoppers, um,
That makes sense.
that I went that
Filling in.
weekend to
Yeah.
fill in. We were going to Georgia, for the first date and, going down a two-lane road, and there was a log truck in front of us hauling
Mm,
big, long logs.
yeah.
And he was getting ready to turn left, and we were coming up behind him in the bus. Well, the log truck moved across the lane so
Mhm.
that he wasn't in our way and we could go on through. The problem was when he started turning, the logs off the back of the trailer came into our lane,
Mhm.
and Ed was driving, and he hit those logs, and one of the logs came through the front of the bus into the driver's section. And
Wow.
of course, the bus veered off. We went across a ditch and out into a plowed field, is
Wow.
where we ended up stopping at. And so, terrible wreck. Of course, it really messed Ed's leg up really bad.
Mhm.
Well, the rest of his life, he had a limp because of that.
Yeah.
But some people that we were working with down there in Georgia, there was a family down there. In fact, they still sing, called the Hall Sisters.
I've heard of him.
And so we were singing with them that weekend. So they came and picked us up in vans. Um, and their brother actually filled Ed's part for
Mhm.
that weekend so we could go ahead and do the dates. So that was an interesting way of introduction into the Singing Americans. And Danny keeps
Yeah.
saying, Danny always comes back and he apologizes about every time. He said, for me being on the bus the weekend they have a bus wreck. I said, Danny, you didn't have anything to do with that. So,
Not his
um,
fault. Yep.
yeah. So, after I came off the road with the Down East Boys and I started working at, what became Crossroads Horizon
Mhm.
Records,
Yeah.
Singing Americans were recording for the label up here
Yeah.
for Dawn Records, which was one of our labels. And, that was about the time that David left Singing Americans and went to the Kingdom Heirs. David Jenkins. I mean, not David
Okay.
Jenkins. David, why am I just totally drew a blank on he's
Sutton?
triumphant tenor
Sutton,
singer.
David Sutton.
David Sutton, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
He he left Singing Americans, went to the Kingdom Heirs,
Yeah.
and so Charlie called me and he said, "He's he's gone. We are planning on closing the group down, but we've got like 4 months of dates left that we want to
Okay.
cover." He said, "Could you do those dates?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do those dates." So the last 3 or 4 months of the Singing Americans, I was the tenor singer for. So we never recorded or anything like that.
The Singing Americans had so many great songs through the years. What were, some of your favorites to sing when in those last few months with them?
Oh, wow. Obviously, I Bowed on My Knees
Yeah,
was a big one. I honestly, I'd off the top of my head,
no
I
problem.
can't think because we just kinda learned stuff that we could
Mhm.
put together for have a set, for a
Trying to like a
length of
set, that
time
makes
there.
sense.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. So, but we had a great time. That was a lot of
Cool.
fun.
Yeah. So then your next on the road would be you spent, I think, a decade or more with Squire Parsons.
Yeah. Yeah, I traveled with, Squire from '95 through 2005, and,
How'd that come about?
it actually came about because, of course, I knew Squire,
Mhm.
um, from, my Hopper days.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I really got to know Squire, and of course, the record label being here in Asheville, and I had moved here to Asheville, and of course, Squire is
Local?
from here in Asheville, the Kingsman days and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Um, Squire just came into the studio one day. He was actually recording
Okay.
at the studio here in Asheville, and he said, "I'm thinking about putting the group back together. My oldest son Seth is wanting to sing."
Mhm.
And he said, "Would you be interested in doing it?" And so I talked to Mickey and Eddie, the ones that owned the studio, and of course, at that time, Eldridge Fox
Yes.
was part of the ownership of the studio. And I said, "Can we work this out to where I'm working here at the studio? What days we're not on the road, and then I travel with Squire the other days?" And so they said, "Yeah, sure, we can do that." So I traveled with Squire for 10 years. So I tell people all the time, especially after Squire's passing, I said, "I feel more blessed than anybody in the industry because I've got to travel with Squire Parsons and Connie Hopper, and not
Yeah.
many people could say that."
That's true, that's true. I don't c Is there anybody else who can say that? I can't think of anybody else.
No, no one
Okay.
else could have
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, yeah.
So you kind of didn't get any downtime.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
How did you do
No.
that for more than a decade?
I think that's actually why at the end of that decade, it was like, "Okay, you can't do this forever."
Yeah.
Because basically we would leave either Wednesday night at midnight or
Mhm.
Thursday morning, um, do our trip with Squire. We would come in, Sunday night late or early Monday morning. I would run home, take a shower, get cleaned up, go straight to the office, work
Mhm.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 to 5, and then pack up, head back out again. And I did that for 10 years. And it was, I enjoyed it because I
Yeah?
really got to learn a lot of stuff while still doing what I love of the singing side of it.
Yeah.
But physically, of course, as I got older, it made it a lot harder to do it. So I finally, Squire always said, "I want to make sure that you're where you feel is in the will of God."
Mhm.
And he said, "If you're ever thinking about it," he said, "this is my suggestion and um, my way of doing things when I have to make a big decision on things." He said, "I put out a fleece before the Lord
Mhm.
and it, make 3 things that I could not change the outcome of, and don't
Mhm.
tell anybody what they are.
Okay.
And then if the Lord answers those things, then you'll know that that's where you're supposed to be going."
Okay.
And so I did that. I thought, that sounds like a great way to make life decisions. And so I did that. And the last part of the fleece was
Mhm.
that the company here Crossroads would want me to come back on full time.
Yeah.
And, all the other 2 things had happened.
Okay.
That was the final piece of the puzzle, and I came in one day and Vicky said, "We really want to bring you back on full time. Would you be interested in doing that?" And I was like, "Yep." That was the 3rd answer. Of course, she
Wow.
looked at me like, "What?"
I can imagine the look on her face, knowing her well
Yeah.
enough. I can just imagine.
So
Oh my.
that's how I knew that the time was ready to, come on full time here at the studio and hold off on the travel time.
So you didn't have to audition with Squire then. If he just walks in and asks you to join, you didn't have to sing anything with him to he just knew what you could do vocally and you were the guy he wanted.
Yeah, really,
That's
when I
cool.
go back and I think about it, and I hadn't thought about this until you just said that,
Okay.
I never actually auditioned for the Hoppers
Okay.
because
Because you're filling
they
in.
they knew yeah, well, they knew what I could do from singing,
Mhm.
uh, winning their talent contest, and then, of course, singing with the Christianaires, which we sang with them a couple times, so I didn't ever try out there. Um, I didn't try out for the Down East Boys, they just
Mm.
offered me the position because they knew what I could do from the Hopper days,
Yeah.
and then I never tried out for Squire because he knew what I could do, so really, I hadn't tried out a whole lot.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Um, okay, couple questions about the Squire years. What were your favorite songs to sing with him or your favorite songs to hear him sing?
Oh boy. Barbara Huffman that writes for Singing News asked me
Yes.
this because she was doing an article after Squire passed. And I said,
Yeah.
obviously, everybody remembers I Call It Home,
Mhm.
The Broken Rose, He
Yeah.
Came to Me, Sweet
Yeah.
Beulah Land, of
Yeah.
course.
Of course.
Um, and those were always favorites.
Yeah.
Out of the favorites of Squire songs, probably one of my favorite songs was He Came to Me.
Yeah. I love
But
that song.
Ki it is the King of Kings.
Okay.
Amazing big ballad, power ballad song. That
Mhm.
was always one that anytime Squire said, I think I'm gonna do that," um, and that kicked off is that you knew where it was going. It was just gonna be big. Um, Trio-wise, my favorite song is a song that Squire wrote called "My Lord Sent a Ship."
Okay.
We did this on a trio album that's called the Millennial Collection,
Okay.
the Squire Parsons Trio,
Yeah.
and, that song is just it was never a really popular song, no other groups that I know of ever picked it up, but it's a great group song and just great lyrically.
Yeah.
Squire's oldest son, Seth, sang it on the recording and did a great job of that. So that's always been one that has stood out to me. Obviously,
Cool.
pretty much so unless it was a classic, everything we sang was a Squire song. So,
Mhm.
when you've written that many songs, you know, you're pretty much gonna sing Squire songs.
Do you know how many songs he wrote and roughly how many of those you had to be ready for him to call at any moment?
That was the key part right there. What was he
Yes.
gonna call?
Yeah.
Squire knew, um, what his first 2 or 3 songs were
Okay.
each night. He would let us know because, whichever one of us was doing sound, he would fire these tracks. These are gonna be my first 2 or 3 songs, and then from there, he just called. He never had a set
Mhm.
list. He just followed where he thought the Lord was taking him and where the audience seemed to be wanting to go.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we often on the trio set normally what Squire would do is he would go in and he would do the first half of a concert solo, and
Okay.
then we would come back on the second half and we would do all trio stuff, on the second half.
Do you know
And
why he would do that?
basically because he had so many solo songs that people
Mhm.
wanted. Um, and of course, a lot of the dates that we did were just Squire dates. They
I
weren't
see.
dates with the Kingsmen and the Hoppers and a bunch of other
Mhm,
groups. If we were on a concert tour type of date,
mhm.
he would still normally start solo, but he would bring the trio in on the first half
Okay.
with those. But yeah, on the dates that were just us, he did the first half. We came in, did the second half, and we just had to be ready because we had no clue what he was going to say. Part of the time, he would just go to the piano and start playing and whatever came to him, that's where we went. And there were times when he would play something thinking that we would grab the introduction to it, and we had no clue what he was playing. And it was like,
Oh
we're sitting
my.
there with, "What do you want?" "I don't
Yeah,
know."
yeah.
Number of songs, I'm actually working with the Parsons family,
Okay.
trying to help them with the publishing side. I had actually started working with Squire before his passing, trying to help him with licensing and stuff like that on his catalog. Um, we know it's over 2,000 songs, but we don't
Wow.
know exactly how many. Of course, there's the old Squire Parsons hymnal.
I have that hymnal. But
Yes,
that's about
and
what,
it
4 or 500?
yeah, it's got well, there's what do we got here? Four. Yeah, there's over 400 in here.
Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, that's the old Squire Parsons hymnal. So, and that's nowhere near the number of songs that there's a lot of songs. He would be on the bus, and the bus that we had built had a room for Squire right in the middle of the bus that had a keyboard in it, recording equipment,
Hmm.
and he would sit and write songs all the time. So of course we would hear him going up and down the hall, past his room on the bus. We'd hear him working on stuff, and there was a lot of songs. I'd say, "Squire, what that song you're working on? I want to hear the rest of that." He goes, "No, that one's just between me and God."
Hmm.
And, so he wrote a lot of stuff that never saw the light of day that he really
Mm.
just wrote for himself or as something to the Lord.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So are there plans then to maybe make, more of those songs available to the public in the future, or is that just for their internal records you're helping them?
We're trying to do both.
Cool.
We're finding there's a lot of catalog that, actually never got registered,
Mhm.
correctly or fully, and so we're trying to make sure all of that stuff gets through, but, thankfully, Squire had spent a lot of the last couple years, um, actually putting work tape demos down to a lot of stuff,
That's
and
cool.
so, we're trying to go through that and, be able to have that stuff where artists can, say, "Hey, I want a Squire song. This is what I'm looking for. Can you help me with it?"
Yeah, neat.
Mm.
Uh, oh, just a random thing I was wondering. Would Squire sing any of his songs live, or were there any songs he wrote that he viewed as being so associated with another group that he just didn't do them?
No, normally, songs like "I'm Not Giving Up" or "If God
Mhm.
Be For Us" that were, big
Yeah.
Gold City hits, Kingsman songs, through the years, um, he would do those a lot. In fact,
Okay.
"If God Be For Us" and "I'm Not Giving Up," he would do the solo versions of those, um, a whole lot.
Hmm.
And then there were some of them that we actually made trio versions. It's actually, "I Go to the Rock" that,
Mhm.
Kingdom Heirs cut,
Yeah.
and then Hoppers came back and did a different version of it, more driving version of it.
Yeah.
Um, at church last week, we've got a little quartet together, and
Mhm.
and so
Well, little quartet. You got some. There's some name. There's some name. You're not the only name people know in that quartet.
that's true. Arthur Rice, a lot of people know Arthur Rice from
Yeah.
his days with the Kingdom Heirs, and of course, some know him from the days with the Kingsmen.
Mhm.
Squire Arthur traveled with Squire for years too, and so we were going to do that the other week at church, and I have to remind myself
Mhm.
that it's the Kingdom Heirs version, the real true quartet version,
Yes.
because when I was with Squire, When we recorded I Go to the Rock, we
Mhm.
did a version that was much more towards the hoppers leaning. It's got a lot more drive and some different step outs and stuff like that. And so we're up there singing along, and Arthur's supposed to have the pickup for the chorus going back into it. Well,
Mhm.
on the version that we always did, I had that one. And so I
I
jump
see.
in there, and thankfully I had done a high part and it actually harmonized with Arthur. But he looks at
Oh,
me, he goes,
good.
"Wrong version, huh?"
Yeah. I think a couple more questions about Squire, and then just for the sake of time, I'll wrap up here.
Okay.
You did a trio called The Message,
Uh-huh.
right? And then you did
Uh-huh.
some solo stuff, and then
Uh-huh.
all kinds of interesting things behind the scenes that I'd love to revisit in another conversation. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll just wrap up with a couple more things about Squire
Okay.
for today. Quite often, I see just looking through SG history or from many personal collection, I see on his albums he'd record a song maybe even the same year that Gold City or Kingsman or somebody else cut it.
Mhm.
Do you know chronologically if he would tend to wait till somebody else cut it and then put it out later that year, or if he'd put it out and then as soon as it's out, it's like a race between the groups so you can put out their version first?
A lot of times Squire would record it first,
Okay,
and then he would use his album as the pitch
I
tapes
see.
for other groups. Um, Now, if it happened to be a song that he did not pitch, but 2 or 3 members of 2 or 3 different groups picked up a Squire album,
Hmm.
and said, "Hey, let's record that," then, like you said, it's whoever grabs it first type of thing, with that. But, normally, he would actually record first,
Okay.
and then he would use those to pitch to the group.
So he did enough dates that weren't the big Southern gospel, like he has Singing in the Sun Now or that kind of thing, that weren't the big Southern gospel multi-artist venue dates that other artists were comfortable. It wasn't like all their audiences would have heard this song because
Right,
Squire's doing enough dates of his own that were church dates or that kind of thing.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, we would normally do somewhere around 225 to 250 dates a year with Squire.
Okay.
And probably out of that, I would say maybe 20 to 30 of those dates were actually with another group, another main, like, Kingsman, Gold City, Hoppers, something like that. Almost the whole time, it was dates that were just Squire Parsons dates, or it was a date where we were working with a group from the area, a local artist, stuff like that.
Okay.
So it really didn't affect us. Obviously, we would do like Singing at Sea cruise. Squire was a mainstay on that for many, many years. And so those times, then obviously those groups, were on there, but it never came into uh, any kind of issue.
Cool. All right. Last Squire question, and then I'll start moving toward wrapping up this time for this conversation. Same question as I asked for Claude and Connie. Now that he's gone on to glory, there's a new generation of fans who won't get to know him in person. So, can you describe what he was like? Personality, what he was like to travel with. I've heard you and others talk about his time in the Word. I'd love to hear you share some of that for people who won't get to meet him in person.
Yeah, Squire was a very special, guy for sure. Very much grounded in the Word, very much ministry oriented, more
Hmm.
so ministry oriented, I would say, than he was business oriented.
Okay.
Um, he was one of those that, um, he could have very easily charged a whole lot more to go sing than what he would.
Hmm.
But his thought is, I want to take the gospel and the gospel in music to places that can't afford
Hmm.
to have a mainline artist, and I want to deliver the music in a first class way of doing it. And so that's why we worked everything from Dr. Stanley's church, Dr. Adrian Rogers' church, Dr.
Hmm.
Jim Henry's church. We did all of the the big Baptist churches, especially
Hmm.
back in the day. But it was nothing for us to be at, Mount Zion Church in the middle of, coal country in Kentucky
Hmm.
that had 25 members.
That's so
Um,
cool.
it never mattered to us. In fact, there was one church that we actually did it a couple times down near Gastonia, North Carolina, where
Hmm.
literally, and this is literally speaking, when I pulled the bus in beside the church, the bus was as long as the church building was. Literally.
Wow.
Pack the building out, they could probably put 50 people in it.
Yeah.
And that's shoulder to shoulder. But we did it a couple times, and those people just loved it. And
Cool.
I think that's what people really enjoyed with Squire was the fact that he wanted to go where the people needed it.
Hmm.
Didn't matter if they could afford to pay what the expenses were to run the bus and have 4 employees in, his company. Um, he just went where his thing was always there's a date somewhere down the road that'll make up the difference.
Wow.
Uh, the big Baptist churches, the big Methodist churches, the Church of Gods, all the different ones that we went to that could afford to pay and wanted to pay a flat, not an offering.
Hmm.
Um, they made up the difference for the churches that, could barely pay him $500 to come.
That's neat.
Yeah. So just, I mean, great things like that ministry wise. Squire was a blast to travel with.
Okay.
Most people didn't realize he was a bit of a prankster.
Okay.
So
Do you have any? Do you have any memorable ones that come to mind?
he would, of course, with his boys traveling with him
Yeah.
off and on through there, he would love to pull pranks
Yeah.
on them.
Hmm.
Um, and so he would say, don't say anything, but I hid this in Sam's bed. He's gonna scare him to death when he gets in his bed, but it's in there. Or he'd lock somebody in the bathroom on the bus or,
Hmm.
just, you never knew what he was gonna do. But he was a lot of fun,
Mm.
to travel with as well as being very ministry oriented.
Cool. Very neat. Well, uh, you're a man of many talents, and we've only talked about the onstage portion of them, but I'd love to catch up with you later, talk about more. Um, for now, though, how can people keep up with what Crossroads is doing, the latest from your artists, or any how keep up with what you're doing if you'd like?
Yeah, the best way, obviously, like everybody else in the world today, the best way to keep up with Crossroads, our labels are Horizon Records and Sunlight Records, or
Hmm.
the gospel labels. The best way to keep up with us is Facebook,
Hmm.
or Instagram, either one. And so just search out um, I think on all the social media platforms, it's Horizon Sunlight Records. We kind of combine
Hmm.
the two, so we'd have two different ones for the labels. There's really no difference in the two labels, just they started separately, and so we kept them separately, even though we joined everything together. So that's the best way to keep up with it, and we're really excited. A lot of great things going on. We've got for the ones who don't uh, maybe not know, but we've got Kingsman, Inspirations, Kingdom Heirs, 11th Hour, Mark Bishop, Lauren Talley. We've got some newer groups, a group called Sound Street
Hmm.
that
Love those
record for
guys.
us. There's a family group from up in Ohio called the Lore Family that record with us. We just signed a new group that I'm really excited about called the Rogers Family.
Oh,
Um,
their live streams with Wyatt Austin, the hymn sings are
yes,
special.
Yes, super talented and just such a sweet family. So,
Hmm.
we've got a lot of groups and a lot of new music that we've been working on, getting ready to come out. So, keep following Horizon Sunlight Records on social media pages, and that's kind of the best way to keep up with us.
Perfect. And to the listener, I say thank you for listening to Southern Gospel Journal. Keep up with the latest episodes on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform, or on southerngospeljournal.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Daniel.